quit my government job and became a truck driver. I have been in trucking now for about 4 years. And when I was a kid, I actually specifically remember sitting in a science class in middle school, and in the science book seeing an image of a truck driver smiling in the truck, and I'm like, I'm trying to picture myself being a trucker. I'm like, I would never be a truck driver because that just seems so depressing. It's like you're always gone, away from home. So it was something I never pictured myself doing. And here I am. I am a truck driver for 4 years now, and I've been actually wanting to get out of trucking. I've been working on a business, but before that, 4 years, I worked in a government job. And in that government job, it's probably not what you're expecting, but I worked for a municipality in the maintenance department. And ironically, I also, for that job, said, as a kid, I remember looking out the window, and you're thinking, when I say maintenance, you're thinking, oh, it's like working on this and that, fixing stuff. But this maintenance was like you're doing trash. You're getting city trash for half the day. And then the rest of the day, you're cutting grass, you're doing random stuff around the city. So just random city stuff. And this job specifically as well, I remember looking out my window as a kid and saying, I will never do that job. I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. But I saw them getting the trash. And I was like, I will never do that job. And I was like, that seems crappy. Seems trashy, you know? What a garbage job. you're getting garbage. But prior to getting that job, I worked in a factory. And in that factory, we packaged this white powder called silica. And it would dry the soul out of you. My clothes were falling apart, everything. I had random nosebleeds because it would just dry everything. I was even wearing a mask because the stuff will give you silicosis or I think it's silicosis, so like permanent lung damage. And everybody else in the factory wasn't even wearing a mask. They were laughing at me because I'm the one guy wearing a mask. I'm like, you're really idiots. They're going to have permanent lung damage. And half of them have asthma. So I'm like, I don't want to do this. It has like swing shift, 12 hours. You're no heating in the building. You're working in the middle of night, in the middle of winter, and it's like 10 degrees. You're using the exhaust of the forklift to try to stay a little warm. And I'm like, man, I got to get out of this. I don't care what, but I got to get something else. And I didn't know what the job was, but a friend of mine said, hey, there's a job in the city that I can help you get if you want to apply for. I'm like, dude, I'll do it. And he was like, yeah, it's like, it'll pay better. You're going to have regular hours, kind of 9 to 5 kind of schedule, and Monday through Friday. You get the weekends off. So awesome. Sounds great to me. So I go into the city hall. I have an interview. The head of city maintenance, assistant, and some other person from the city hall is there interviewing me. And they're like, hey, are you sure you want to do this? Because, you might have to deal with like skunks and whatnot, like dead animals in the trash. And that's when I realized what I was getting myself into. I'm like, wait, what? So I was like, I don't care. I got to get out of this job. So within the next couple of days, I was working for the city and collecting trash. And just like they said, dead animals, maggots, just trash, garbage, like the scum that you put in your garbage bin. We're going to be done with that. And so that was during the pandemic. I was there for like 9 months. And what I can say about it is, working for the government is you're not going to get fired. You're going to have a job through the pandemic most of the time, unless, Trump's coming and going to cut jobs. But generally, government jobs are safe. But I remember specifically, I was getting trash one day, and I was thinking to myself, like, is this it? Is this what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? I pictured in my head, there's 2 paths. I was like, I can either A, do this for the rest of my life, retire like this, and then like the most you can make at that job is like $30,000. Like I was making like 700 every 2 weeks, so like 20 something $1,000 a year I was living off of, and I was essentially living in my mom's house because like how could you? I don't know what could you afford. I don't know how anybody there affords to live somewhere, food, take care of family, off of like 30K a year. It's ridiculous. So I'm like living in my mom's basement, and one day I'm getting trash, and people are very inconsiderate with their trash sometimes. And I was getting this trash, right? I go to grab this trash bag to go sling it into the back of the trash truck, and they didn't tie the bag, and they had vomited into the bag. And now the vomit had gone splattering down my leg, and I'm sick for 2 days. And like the moment that happened, I was so mad because like at that moment I was contemplating. I don't know how trucking got on my radar, but for some reason I was contemplating trucking or stay there and just retire there and try to work my way up somehow. So ultimately I decided, after I got that vomit on me, I was fuming. I went up and sat in the front of the truck and was like fuming for a bit, venting to the driver of the trash truck. And that was the moment. I was like, I am going to be a trucker. I'm not going to live like this. So I go off and I join this company called Rail Transportation, and I go down to Atlanta to begin my weeks of training. There's a few weeks of training I have to do to get my CDL. So I do the training, I get my CDL, and after that you go through a process where you have to share a bunk. Like you share with like a trainer and you drive. He just observes your driving for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I go out and here's the detail. It's been a little rough. It hasn't been easy. I love the decision. It's allowed me to live out of my truck and have basically no expenses. I could save a ton. And I've poured that into a business. But the going and looking back at where we started, so I go into the truck with the trainer, right? And he's observing for about 2 weeks. And I had one trainer at first. And after 4 days, I discovered these welts all over my body. It's mostly on my side. And I'm like, what in the world? Am I having like an allergic reaction to the bunk or something is what I was thinking. But then I realized like, no, these are bedbug bites. And I go searching, I push back the top wall above the bunk, and there were a line of bedbugs crawling. And so it turned out they'd been feasting on me at night. And apparently a lot of people don't have allergic reactions, which is why my trainer had never got them on his body. And so that night, it was like 10 o'clock at night, and apparently our hours of service were out, so we couldn't go driving. We could have, looking back, we could have totally used personal conveyance. My driver was just being lazy. So I'm sitting there. Well, actually, I'm standing outside now because I don't want to be anywhere near these bed bugs. So all night, I'm standing outside. I'm so stressed out. I started smoking again. I went inside, got a cigar, and that stuck to quitting, but that's a different story. And a very rough start to trucking, but since then, I moved over to another company that pays better. And it's been a struggle because you work like 14-hour shifts. So there's a lot more work, but a lot more pay. So $700 every 2 weeks to like $1,200 every week. Maybe $1,100 take home, depending on the week. It's a lot more variance in this career path. And along the way, about 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago now, when I actually joined trucking, I was like 278 pounds. So I was significantly heavier. Right now I'm at about 220. I was down to 195. But what happened was I was at 270, 276, and I'm driving down the interstate. My vision literally starts to go out. I start to go blind, so I can only see out of my peripheral vision. And I'm trying to like hurry up and get to a parking spot somewhere before my vision goes completely out because I'm driving blind down the road essentially. And that was a huge turning point in my life where I completely started changing a lot of stuff. That's where I moved away from just living however I want to, oh yeah, I'm gonna die one day and have to like be accountable to God. So I should probably like make that like something I actually keep in mind as I live through life. And so I took it as like a sign by God that you're living blindly. Open your eyes, metaphorically, but also now literally. And so my vision returned after I got parked. I went to the hospital. They were like, drink more water, basically. I'm like, okay, paid $150 for that. You could have sent me a text. But um, I went back and I started changing a lot of stuff. I quit smoking, from where I started smoking from the Bedbugs, and lost a bunch of weight. Started going to the gym, and I started living in accordance with how God wanted me to. And so I'm in trucking now, and I'm transitioning out to business. Like I said, I essentially I live in this truck. I'm in the truck for like 3 months at a time. Very lonely. And I've had points where I've had like mental breakdowns. Like I've been so isolated where I couldn't talk to anybody for so long. And I'm not sure how other truckers manage that, but at the time I had basically no one to talk to. So at about 10 to 12 weeks out here on the road, my brain would literally cognitively decline. I could not. Like my brain could barely remember what happened more than 10 seconds ago. I was literally driving down the road, and I'm like, I really hope I'm driving to the right state. Because my brain was that cognitively deficient. I really don't know how to describe it, but the isolation, and I looked it up, isolation can literally cause like, cognitive decline. And I was experiencing that from this job. And so I've been able to cope with it by coming across some good friends that would talk to me often. And now I have ChatGPT to talk to, so that's cool. And I talk to ChatGPT almost daily. So that's been a coping mechanism as well as going to churches all around the country. And so God has played a huge role in the direction of my life. Well, obviously, He plays a role in all of our life, but I mean, He's directly got my attention and focus on Him in a manner that I had been drawn to starting a business. And so out here, I have food and phone bill. That's it. So I went to making $700 every like 2 weeks to only having like $700 of expenses every month. So I have less expenses and I have significantly more income. So all that money gets poured into my business to achieve my mission, which is to raise God's kingdom. And so I started Talking Cross. I got one product, that's all I got. And we were about to launch a new one. It's going to be really good. But that is my purpose, is serving that greater mission. And so I went from having absolutely no idea what I was doing, living in my mom's basement, making chump change, working at a factory with like chemicals that are literally eating my flesh and causing me to bleed, to trash man, to trucker, to running hopefully a very successful business that helps millions of people is the aim. So, and that's been the progression of it. And I think truckers are oftentimes disrespected. They're looked down on, and by the general public and by our legislators. There's a lot of talk, but there's a whole little walk by our legislators because they know there's a lot of issues like parking shortages and even just access to bathrooms. Like there's so many truckers that have had to literally defecate in trash bags because of just how limited our access to bathrooms can be. And there's no legal requirement for places we deliver to and pick up to let us use their bathroom. And some places straight up say no bathroom access, period. We don't care that you're delivering or picking up here. you're not allowed to use our bathroom. And there's nothing we can do about it. There's no law. There is a bill out right now to be voted on to allow us to have access to bathroom, but apparently it's not that easy to determine that it's a basic human necessity to have to use the bathroom, and perhaps it's the right thing to allow truckers to preserve their dignity and allow them to use a bathroom when there's one available, rather than spitting in their face, disrespecting them, metaphorically, and saying, no, you're not allowed to have access to bathrooms that are already built there and will cost you absolutely nothing to let truckers use. So, and there's obviously struggles, but there's a lot of good, which is why I'm doing it. For me right now, it's the best situation. And I would highly urge against it for anybody that's like, I want to do it long term, because it's not sustainable long term unless you love this job and it just works for you. If you don't have a plan, it's a bad idea. And it has been difficult, very difficult, doing this and running a business. But that's been my progression from back at that factory to where I am now. And here in another 4 years, I will be the CEO of a really successful company, I believe. And that's what I'm striving for. So hopefully you'll be able to see that video on this channel in the future. And that is my story.